When saving lives is what you do, your standards are anything but standard. In fact, you set them higher than most to deliver results that patients can depend on. You refuse to compromise. We couldn't agree more. We are Edwards Life Sciences, and like you, we believe that good is never good enough. Rising to the challenge of today's TAVR patients isn't just a mission, it's a commitment. And because you set a higher standard, we set our sights on meeting you there. Welcome to the higher standard, your standard. Learn more at edwardstavr.com.
Welcome to Parallax by Ankur Kalra, a podcast produced by Radcliffe Cardiology to bring you a new angle of all things cardiology and the best from the US Cardiology Review. Published every second Monday, Ankur Kalra, MD, interventional cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, USA, speaks with legendary cardiologists, reviews late-breaking trials, and interviews authors of our latest and best US Cardiology Review articles. We call them #audio articles. Parallax is the effect whereby the position or direction of an object appears to differ when viewed from different positions. So this podcast is your fix of reliable updates on all things cardiology by someone from a non-traditional background who is always looking at the industry from a new angle. Now, here's your host, Ankur Kalra, MD.
Welcome to another episode of Parallax. It's a great pleasure to have on the show. I would say my colleague, like myself, she's early career and, seems to have done, really well and is very happy with where she is. And, that's always is great to hear from a colleague. I don't think we've crossed paths, but, we've sort of known each other on social media and, through common mentors, Dr. Kapadia being one of them. So my guest today is Dr. Sodhi. Nishtha Sodhi is an interventional cardiologist at University of Virginia. As part of her, portfolio, she performs, advanced structural heart interventions in addition to, coronary interventions. So without much further ado, Nishtha, welcome on the show, and thank you for your time to do this.
Thank you so much, Ankur. It's really my honor and privilege to be part of your show. I also wanted to say congratulations on all the amazing work that you are doing with a lot of your innovative pieces like the Bhagavad Gita and COVID, and of course with this very unique podcast. You're very inspirational for all of us as we start our early career as well. So congratulations and kudos for all the hard work that you've done for the field as well.
Oh no, thank you. If what I write resonates with colleagues, that's like the best gift any author can ask for, quite frankly. So Nishtha, let's get started. So do you want to just tell the audience or the listenership about your journey into where you are right now? Let's go back to some of the formative years, with you being in high school, maybe middle school or high school, when all of us are very impressionable and start forming patterns of what we want to do in our lives.
Sure. So I grew up actually exposed to my entire family and really extended family in medicine. My dad is a cardiac surgeon. My mom's a cardiac anesthesiologist, and my brother's in orthopedics. But rather than just sort of simply, and naturally following their footsteps, I really wanted to be sure about medicine before I chose it for myself. And so growing up in middle school, high school, I was sort of, captain of the debate team, lead defense attorney for mock trials. So I sort of did a lot of non-scientific things. I pursued a business certificate in college, studied abroad in Spain to finish a Spanish minor, and really sort of immersed myself in non-scientific things. And I think that that's very helpful and important, particularly as we try to be more humanistic doctors and connect with our patients. And certainly some of those skills, such as the business education and Spanish language, are certainly relevant skills that I use in my practice today and in expanding our VALV program. But after sort of exploring all these other options, I chose to do a 7-year combined undergraduate and medical school program in Philadelphia. And so after 3 years of undergrad, I started medical school at Drexel in Philadelphia. And it was really, I think, between my first and second year of medical school, we sort of, it's that last summer vacation or break, if you will. And at that time, I wanted to pursue clinical research during this time, and had always sort of been drawn to cardiac pathology and physiology. And that I sort of at that time came across the American Association of Thoracic Surgery Scholarship, which is a scholarship designed for medical students as an opportunity to pursue cardiac research under the mentorship of an AATS surgeon mentor. So, I saw that. I thought it would be a pretty cool opportunity. And, I literally and simply just went on to the University of Pennsylvania hospital website, and I came across Dr. Joe Bavaria, who is the vice chief of the Division of Cardiac Surgery at Penn. And, I kind of cold blindly just emailed him and, just introduced myself. Hi, I'm a first year medical student. I'm interested in applying for this AATS scholarship. And, I remember thinking when I did that, either he's not going to respond or, he'll say no or something like that. But, fortunately he responded and asked me to come interview with him. And so I interviewed, and we put together a research proposal on thoracic endovascular stent grafting, TVAR technology. And at the time, I thought it was very fascinating about, this approach of endovascular or percutaneous. And ultimately, I was selected to do this scholarship. And I remember thinking, this will be great. I'll spend 8 weeks at Penn with the cardiac surgery department. I'll hopefully get to work on this project and sort of, present it, and it'll be sort of a great experience. And in my mind at the time, I was like thinking that, it would just be a one summer, one and done type thing. But, I had no idea really how transformative and really life-changing that experience was going to be. I completed that project, but it was in that summer that I spent a lot of time in the cardiac OR. And it was in that summer that I also discovered the cardiac catheterization lab. And it's kind of a funny story. I just sort of looked on the hospital map sort of on my own one day and figured out what floor the cath lab was on, and, just walked up and showed up one day and introduced myself. And I remember that one of the first cases that I got to see was a mitral valvuloplasty being performed by none other than Dr. Howie Herman. And I just remember thinking, during that case, how cool was it that, they were doing this valve procedure without opening up the chest and, being able to talk to the patient during the procedure and really, having an almost immediate tangible result for the patient. And it made a big impression on me. And I thought the cath lab was just a really cool place. And I was really impressed with the possibilities of transcatheter procedures at the time. Subsequently, I received an AOA scholarship and did more clinical research at Penn. And this was sort of around 2008. And as you remember, the early partner trials were just starting, in the United States at that time. And Penn was fortunately a clinical trial site. And I was incredibly lucky that I got to see the team in action. And, I was impressed with the mitral valvuloplasty, but I was blown away with seeing a TAVR being done. And so I decided very early, this was right after my first year of medical school, that this has sort of all happened. That I wanted to one day be an interventional cardiologist and do TAVR one day. So it really, it's been, so incredible to go through all that from that early time.
Yeah, no. So I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you've had such an incredible story to tell and such a great journey. So, and I think also, to sort of be exposed that early on to sort of luminaries in their respective fields of cardiac surgery and interventional cardiology, in the form of Joe Bavaria and Howie Herman, respectively. I'm sure was just the perfect timing when, we're sort of setting ourselves up in med school as to what paths to pursue. So, and then the TAVR timing couldn't be better, right? Because I believe you would be in residency, right, at the time when the initial TAVR trials were being presented?
Yeah, so exactly. So 2008, when I was in medical school, they were just sort of enrolling patients. And so sort of fast forward, I think, to when I was in residency at the Cleveland Clinic, which I chose largely because of my interest in cardiology. We were starting to get some of the earlier results out. And, I think to your point, I couldn't agree more about sort of the mentorship and exposure because, really it was largely because of, what I saw with, Joe Bavaria, Wilson Zito, Nimesh Desai, all the cardiac surgery and interventional cardiology teams at Penn, that their mentorship and really their support of, this young medical student that just, decided to come do research with them was just so incredibly important. And, that has carried to residency and fellowship and even today. And so I think you and I both have the good fortune of calling Dr. Samir Kapadia one of our mentors. And during residency, that was the same for me as well, to have him and to be able to work with him and continue to develop my interest in valvular heart disease and interventional cardiology. So I felt very sort of well supported, and certainly coming then and choosing to pursue cardiology training, I went on to Washington University in St. Louis, and that we talk about mentorship and sponsorship, and that training program just was absolutely phenomenal and really instrumentally transformative for me. I remember when I was interviewing for fellowship, with Doug Mann and Andy Cates, I sort of had expressed, that I wanted to pursue structural and interventional. And so the cath lab, all the cath lab faculty were very extremely supportive from the get-go. And I'll share with you an anecdote. Our fellowship class, we had 10 fellows per year, a very large program. And I always was sort of the youngest person in my class. That wasn't sort of new to me, but during fellowship, that was the first time that I was the only girl in my class of 10. And I remember that there were about 6 out of 10 of us that wanted to pursue interventional. And, we ultimately all interviewed with, all the cath lab staff and went through the whole application process. And, they chose one person to sort of do this fast track and 2+2 opportunity. And, I was very fortunate to be that individual. And I think, to the faculty's credit, they sort of helped support, what I wanted to do with my career. And so, interventional fellowship, was great. I think our cath lab director, Jazz Singh, and the program director, Howard Kurz, there's a long-standing history at WashU of training women. And so, and the lab does everything from IVUS, physiology, complex coronaries, mechanical support and everything. And, the whole lab and the whole culture was just really incredibly supportive. And that carried on, I would say, to my structural year. I stayed at WashU for that. And both, Alan Zajarias and John LaSala run that program. And, I think that it was one of the best training years that I've, ever had. I think, going back to mentorship and sponsorship, they were sort of true sponsors and what we call and look for always, champions of support. And one anecdote that really, I would say sticks out to me is, I was about, I think, 5 or 6 months into my structural year, and we were doing this sort of complex alternative axis, subclavian axis TAVR. And Alan Zajarias, he had me take the lead as a fellow to perform the case with our female cardiac surgeon. And so there's this picture of me, of her. Our device rep at the time was also a woman, and the cardiac surgery fellow that was rotating with us was also a woman. And so you see this picture of us, sort of this female team doing this complex TAVR. And to me, that, everyone in that room, I still remember, just there was this moment of, just acknowledging how unique and special it was. And, that example to me, and when I think back to that, I think that sort of really defines how great mentorship can be, and how lucky I've been to have such great mentors, because, the faculty at WashU, that case demonstrated they made my training a priority. And that faculty also sort of not only had the confidence in my skills to do the case, but also sort of championing this, this female heart team, and sort of wanting women to take the lead. And, I can't speak highly enough about all that mentorship and support. And when I look back at that picture, I'm very grateful for that.
Yes, I remember you. Now, this is a few years ago, right? And yeah, because I remember, I actually vividly remember that picture, you sharing that picture on Facebook, because, we're obviously friends, we're connected on Facebook. And I remember that vividly because it was at the time when I was finishing up my structural heart fellowship and started looking for jobs in 2017. So I joined as early career faculty at CASE in 2017 in the summer before, and, I was there for about a year and a half before moving to the clinic. And that picture sort of stayed with me and was very powerful. It was a powerful picture, and it was also very heartwarming for me to see, that kind of a picture, in the cardiovascular medicine space. And I know there's been a lot of effort, from colleagues like yourself and from leaders in the space like Dr. Mehran to give the women, at least in I would say all across cardiovascular medicine and also other areas in medicine, kudos to her, but specifically within cardiovascular medicine and interventional cardiology, where there is a lacuna, and our patients are, a significant percentage of the patients that we treat are women. And if you truly want to have a workforce which is equally representative of gender and and color and diversity of the country that we live in, I think, and you and I know this, right? I mean, like my mom any day would rather have a female physician than a male physician. And now that that may not be true for your family, but I know that for my family, my mother, the comfort level that my mom feels in interacting with a female physician is different compared with a male physician. And it's true for many Eastern cultures. It's not only true for the Indian culture, but also like several Eastern cultures. Or even immigrants or family or people who are from African American descent, or other African countries, other Middle Eastern countries, and we just have such a diverse workforce that I think diversity and different backgrounds and genders and we should all be welcome. I mean to even think that that is a criterion for selecting trainees is just befuddling to me. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I think you're absolutely right in that, there have been so many, I always sort of look up to, you mentioned Dr. Moran, and, there have been so many of these women, pioneering women, I would say, Dr. Moran, and many of these you've had on your show, Kendra Grubb, Myra Guerrero, Annapurna Kindi, Molly Zerl, all of these women. And to their credit, what they have pioneered and accomplished, and equally important, I would say also, are the men that championed and supported them. for example, Dave Cox, Jay Geary, people at WashU, Cleveland Clinic, the men that also supported them, many of these luminaries, it's really because of their, pioneering hard work and creation of programs like Women as One, Skywin, Women in Cardiology, to, create the resources for awareness for inclusion and diversity that you were mentioning, because I do think that it's so incredibly important to have representation, because I think part of it is, if we can change the face of what people think of when they think of an interventional cardiologist, we're signaling to our medical students that you can be anything that you want to be when you grow up. And it's really, when we think about it from a big picture standpoint, it's really the same reason why, regardless of what your politics are, we can all sort of at least appreciate the historic moment, for example, with Kamala Harris as the first Indian and Black American woman becoming Madam Vice President. Or in the business world, as more female CEOs are taking that position. It's about 7%, still a ways to go in the business world, but it's sort of that representation. And even in the entertainment industry, we in the last couple of years, there was a movie with an all Asian cast out of Hollywood, and I think our world is so diverse, and our leadership positions and the seats at the table should really reflect that diversity, because ultimately that leads to multiple perspectives, which leads to more innovation, more innovative solutions, and really sort of better outcomes for our patients. So I am excited. I am hopeful about, the change that's starting to happen in medicine and cardiology, because I do think that when you can see someone that looks like you in a certain position, you feel empowered that you too can one day be that position. That reminds me very much of Amanda Gorman's poem that she recited at the inauguration. And I just think that there's a lot of hope and positivity that is starting to make its way into medicine too. And I'm hopeful for our medical students.
Excellent messages to share, on the podcast and with our listenership. Let me ask you. So, I mean, you've had such a good story to tell, and you've the kind of support and mentorship that you received. I'm sure maybe or should be a point of reference for other women who want to follow the same path as you followed. Is there any particular set advice that you want to share with, people who are listening, who maybe early career faculty, like myself, or, maybe fellows in training, maybe residents, or house staff or medical students? How do you navigate this space, which is, still pretty crowded with men, I would say? And then, how do you sort of reach out? Because, I don't know if you, I mean, it sounds like you had incredible mentors, and that's how it should be. But for women who do not seek that kind of mentorship in their own programs and are looking out to sort of collaborate between institutions, or reach out to faculty even internationally, do you have any pearls of wisdom, any recommendations, anything you want to share with the listenership?
Sure. I think fundamentally, regardless of if you're a male or female, I think finding what you love and what you're passionate about, and working hard towards that, I think is the foundation and what is going to drive you to achieving those dreams and goals. Because I think that when you're passionate about what you're doing and working hard, you will sort of be drawn or get connected somehow in some way to the right mentors that will not only mentor you, but what we call sponsorship, and really they're the ones talking about you and promoting you when you're not in the room. And I think that there are also other resources and avenues that all the luminaries we were talking about earlier have sort of set in place. So, for example, when I was a fellow, I was part of the founding committee with Dr. Tonya Singh, who's now the president of Women in Cardiology at the ACC national level. But we created initially the Missouri ACC chapter for Women in Cardiology. And here locally at UVA, same thing with, I'm on the advisory committee for the Women in Internal Medicine group, as well as the Women in Cardiology group. And I think nationally and internationally, Dr. Moran and others have created, obviously, resources such as Women as One and SkyWin and Women in Cardiology through ACC. And I think being able to network and utilize those resources is a great first start in ways to sort of connect medical students, trainees, and even early career to other folks that perhaps are not locally at your institution, but certainly out there doing perhaps similar research interests, or just even to run questions by about career advice or how someone may have navigated their own journey. And so I think that one of the great things about these resources that have been created is, they provide at least awareness of who all is out there and what's going on. And I think that as we go forward, other additional opportunities that I think will certainly be helpful are, diversifying our leadership positions. For example, a great example is actually, what you have done as editor-in-chief for the editorial board at the U.S. Cardiology Review. So I think having more women in these positions will eventually lead to that. And it's simple things, even at conferences or at our society meetings, to make sure that our panels and speakers represent the diversity of the world that we live in. So that we can benefit from that diverse perspective.
Thanks for sharing your tips. I'm gonna I just want to get a little bit more granular into one of the tips that you shared, and that was about networking. So how does and this is some people are naturally extrovert and they don't find it hard to walk up to leaders and mentors and luminaries and introduce themselves and make that connection. But some are not. So some are introvert and some feel hesitant, or there is a certain degree of deference, which may preclude you to not approaching that particular individual that you're seeking to connect with, right? How do you? So first off, did you ever experience those emotions when seeking out for individuals and for people? Because I know, and this may come across as a surprise. But I can share with you my own sort of when I was resident and also fellow in training, like approaching to people I wanted to work with was, and I wouldn't say it was an effort for me, but I used, there was, just because of the adulation and awe and respect that I had for them, I felt a little hesitant, and I felt a little out of space and a little awkward approaching them early on. And as I started progressing in my own career, it sort of slowly faded away. So I'm asking that question from a very sincere place in my heart, because I know how that can be an impediment to a lot of people. And when I look back, myself included, maybe if someone would have, taught me or shared with me, what those tips are and how to effectively network without coming off as, like on your, like in your face,
Yeah. No, I totally appreciate that. I think there's no rule book, and yes, it can be, daunting for all of us, particularly earlier in our training. I think that sort of going back to passion and hard work, when you're sort of at your own institution and you're working hard, I think you'll be able to identify local mentors that you're working with on sort of a day-to-day basis that can that take the time to sort of recognize what you're doing and perhaps take interest in what your career goals are. And sometimes, it's a matter of those local mentors and faculty folks serving to help facilitate the connections to the other luminaries or the other mentors at other institutions. And sometimes, sometimes a faculty role in connecting you to someone at another institution, sometimes that mentorship and that help is turns out to be tremendously helpful. And, that facilitating may sometimes take the edge off rather than, individuals emailing directly or reaching out directly. So sometimes that, I think, can certainly help facilitate. I know that, for example, my job where I am today, at UVA, I again owe that to the communication between my faculty at WashU and with Scott Lim, Mike Ragasta, Gaurav Alawadi here. They put me in touch, and it was, they certainly did more than put me in touch, but I say that to say that that's how, I came to meet them and ultimately interview here and ultimately join here as faculty. And, I'm so grateful that happened. So I think sometimes, sometimes there's a lot of different creativity in terms of how you get connected, and with whom and through what. But I think the foundation is that you should have sort of an idea and a passion and sort of an idea of what is your purpose and what do you want to do? Because I think that can then be sort of directed in a constructive way, as opposed to sort of, completely a blank slate. I think it's important to develop your interests and passions and have a sense of what you would like to do. And certainly there's flexibility in things, and certainly guidance, helps with changing that and molding that. But I think having sort of a foundation is particularly helpful. And it becomes, I think, a little bit easier from that standpoint for faculty and senior mentors to help guide you then with sort of more concrete advice and support.
Yeah, no, extremely important points and comments. So moving on, Nishtha. So a couple questions, right? So, what does a week look like for you these days? And this is for someone who's looking up to you to emulate a career like yourself. And then what? So that's one. So I'm going to have you answer that one first, and then the second one is. Where do you see what is it that you want to accomplish that's left, and what is it that you want to accomplish now, and sort of where do you see the field of structural heart move from where you are? Because the reason I bring these questions up specifically to you is because there are very few women who are doing the kind of work that you're doing in the interventional structural space. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, I think, 50% of our medical students are women, but about 13% go into general cardiology, about 4% go into interventional, and less than 2% into structural. Yeah.
So, to get up every morning and sort of say to yourself, I'm in the 2% of the workforce in the field of work that I do is sort of a statement to make, right? It's pretty empowering to think that way. So I think it's all the more important for you to answer those questions because, people who are looking up to you to emulate your career would want to know how a week looks like. Is it a balanced life? Because, balance in life is always a moving target.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are excellent questions. So, I think passion and gratitude drive me. But in terms of the specifics of those questions, I think, interestingly, when I was looking for faculty positions, when I got connected to, Scott Lim, Mike Ragasta, Gaurav Alawadi here, they're just incredibly phenomenal leaders and mentors. And I've been very, very lucky that even as faculty, I now have another group of sponsors and champions for me here as I start my career. But I remember thinking when I was in the interview phase, thinking even UVA, for example, there's actually a long-standing history of women in cardiac here. So believe it or not, there are two women here. One of my interventional partners, Angela Taylor, is a complex coronary and CTO operator here, and she's been on faculty now almost 20 years. The head of our EP here is a woman. And our current chief of cardiac surgery, Leora Yarborough, who I do TAVRs with, obviously is also a woman. And many of our structural and interventional fellows over the last several years have also been women. So, I thought UVA stood out for many, many reasons in terms of being unique from that standpoint. And it's sort of nice to have that culture here. I've been here now for about a year and a half, and I'm really incredibly happy. So my week and sort of my schedule, I am usually in the lab most days of the week. I do coronaries, and then predominantly 3 days of the week, structural cases, and then of course valve clinic. With some academic time. And we perform the full breadth of structural heart disease, aortics, mitrals, ASD, PFOs, Watchmans, of course. But what's very unique about UVA and what I've been fortunate to be a part of is as a clinical investigator on a lot of our clinical trials here, which span tricuspid, pulmonic, interventional heart failure. We were very fortunate, actually, last year at TCT a few months ago. We had the absolute privilege to perform live cases. And so it was an absolute honor for me to do a pulmonary valve replacement with our pediatric interventionalist, as well as help perform and lead discussion on, we did a TMVR case with the Tendyne platform. And I, as a very junior faculty, sort of having that opportunity to lead discussion with Dr. Marty Leone and Mark Reisman, Myra Guerrero, I was very humbled and grateful for these experiences that I've gotten to have so far. And so, I think again, passion, hard work, sort of having a vision for, what impact do you want to do? And for me, that's always been, I'd like to make an impact in terms of doing better in the world for our patients and being able to sort of use this transcatheter technology to help facilitate that. I think with innovation and technology gives us the opportunity to give better care and perhaps more care to patients that sometimes otherwise, wouldn't qualify for traditional surgical options or traditional options. And to me, that is very gratifying to, meet the patient in valve clinic, do this workup, and be able to perform this procedure that has very tangible results. And that's what, that's what drives me. And I think that I would say that, anyone, if I can do this, really, honestly, anyone, male or woman, can achieve their dreams with the right mentorship and hard work. And I think, now that I'm on the other side as junior faculty, and I have medical students and trainees come to me, I think, I share my story just for an example of, if I can do this, anyone can do this with the right mentorship and putting in the hard work. So I think that, we'll be able to get more, hopefully able to, diversify and include more of the medical students, more of our next generation in, and, hopefully diversify the field of structural, interventional, and really of cardiology and medicine as a whole.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So, just to answer the other two questions, where do you see the field moving, from a technical standpoint? And then what is left for Nishtha Sodhi to achieve? And yeah, that'll probably be the last question for the podcast, but
sure. I think the field of structural is completely exploding. I think that, in terms of valvular work, tricuspid is, a couple years ago was sort of that last frontier, if you will. And we're still sort of developing our tricuspid technologies with transcatheter repair and then also dedicated transcatheter valve replacement with certain platforms such as Edwards Evoke, Cardioband. We did actually our first transcatheter tricuspid valve over the summer. So I think that the valvular field, there's obviously still innovation being done both on the mitral side, tricuspid side, for sure. I think the other area of valvular innovation going forward will be sort of optimization of aortic technologies. I think, the TAVR strategy is sort of well developed at this point, but I think what will go in the next several years is how do we optimize it for our patients? How do we make the risks of the procedure even lower than what they are as part one? But then part B, thinking about the patient and the trajectory of their life and optimizing that. So, our patients are living longer, and even they're living longer, but B, some of our even younger patients are presenting with much more complex comorbidities and disease pathologies. And, I always say that it's not just about treating one thing at one time, but sort of thinking about our patients from a longevity standpoint. If I do a TAVR now, what does this imply for 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line versus, surgical options now versus transcatheter later. And so, I think I would say fine-tuning the aortic space, the mitral space. Certainly, our TMVR platforms are definitely here and being studied in clinical trial format. So I think, we're going to see the incorporation, I would say, of those hopefully over the next several years. Same with tricuspid and pulmonic. And I think beyond valvular work, the next frontier truly is this idea of interventional heart failure, because we have this very large population of heart failure patients who have been optimized on guideline-directed medical therapy, but are not so advanced to the point of needing, say, transplant or even LVAD for that matter. And I think that the transcatheter therapies for these patients are still being developed, but are going to be the next frontier. So devices like, for example, Ancora, Accucinch to help remodel the left ventricle, and then also our interatrial devices. So Corvia and V-Wave are two current clinical trials that are looking to see if we create an atrial septostomy shunt between the right atrium and the left atrium with these devices, will that offload elevated pressures in the left atrium and provide some relief for these heart failure patients? So I think, I think that's going to be where we look going forward. The beauty of this technology is that the beauty of the technology is that we can sort of be as creative and innovative as we can to help really treat almost, all parts of the heart and all heart issues at this point, which is really exciting. And, I'm sure you feel the same way. It's really an exciting subspecialty of medicine to be in because of that constant, innovation and learning how we can do better for our patients.
Absolutely. So Nishtha, what do you do for fun, and what is left for you to achieve?
Yeah. So lots of things. I think having work-life balance is incredibly important. And I think, having sense of a life outside of medicine and outside of the hospital is important. And I think, we were talking about earlier, I think, defining yourself with other interests helps you connect, honestly better with patients as well. And to be honest, I think that as we diversify, interventional cardiology and medicine in general, I think that emphasis on diversity and inclusion also allows really inherently for good work-life balance and better sort of job satisfaction and happier people, both in the cath lab, outside the cath lab. I myself, I like to run. I usually run every morning before going into work. I like to hike and do outdoor things, and I like to spend as much time as possible with family and friends, doing all sorts of things. I think going forward in my career, I think one day running a valve program and perhaps one day a division or the C-suite in the hospital, I think are maybe things down the line one day that I may venture into. But for right now, I sort of put my head down every day with humility and gratitude, and I'm enjoying the ride of getting to do what I get to do every day.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you that gratitude is extremely important. Is something that keeps us fulfilled and happy, and really truly the kind of difference that we can make in someone else's life, a fellow human being's life, is something that I personally give ascribe a lot of value and privilege to. So I couldn't agree with you more that we live blessed lives, and we just have to be grateful for everything that we're able to do. So thanks again, Nishtha. This was great. Has been a great conversation, and it's been very, very heartwarming for me personally to learn about your journey and about your career, and and how fulfilled and happy you are. Anyone listening, it's not. It comes across so effortlessly that it's not hard to tell that you're grateful and happy, and all of us would want to aspire to be like you, or at least in that state of mind, for sure. Any closing remarks for the podcast, for the listenership?
Thank you, Ankur. I appreciate it. I think thank you so much. I think anyone can. I think we are in this great place that I think anyone at this point, can achieve those dreams. And I think, be humble, be kind, and do right by your patients. And I always say great things, amazing things will happen. So congratulations to you also as well. Once again, for all the work that you've done. It's truly inspiring. And I really appreciate this honor and privilege to be part of your podcast.
Oh, it's our privilege and our honor, quite frankly. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Dear cardiologists, we want to make this podcast about you and for you. So please email us your critical thoughts, comments, and questions at podcast@radcliffe-group.com and visit uscjournal.com for more information. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Radcliffe Cardiology for daily updates. Join thousands of cardiologists and become a Radcliffean by registering to radcliffecardiology.com. You will receive regular newsletters and gain access to hundreds of expert interviews, educational webinars, clinical cases, and peer-reviewed articles from our 6 medical review journals on general cardiology, interventional cardiology, arrhythmia and electrophysiology, cardiac failure, and vascular and endovascular surgery. Thank you.